Well, as we become clear about the relationship between the population parameter and sample statistic we can measure the behavior in samples to learn more about the behavior in populations that are often too large or inaccessible. So, using the hypothesis testing, we can interpret or draw the conclusion about the population using the sample data. And the hypothesis test is a method for testing or claim mm, of the hypothesis about parameter in the population. And we test this claim using the the data measured in sample. So hypothesis testing evaluates two mutually exclusive statements about the population to determine which statement is best supported by the sample data. So in this method, what we do is we test some hypothesis by determining the likelihood that sample statistic could have been selected if the hypothesis regarding the population parameter were true. And in very short, we can say that hypothesis testing is a systematic way to test the claim or ideas about the group or population using the sample data. Suppose, for example, we have here, like we read an article stating that the children in South Korea watch an average of 3 hours of television per week. And in order to test whether this claim is true, we record the time in hours that a group of 20 children, like this is the sample. Like what we do is we select the sample, or here in our case we select the sample of 20 children, and we record the time in hours of this sample among the children in the Korea, like in the population that there was the who was the television. Then the mean we measure of this sample, like this 20 children, is the sample mean. And what we can do next is we can then compare the sample mean, like this 20 children, the mean of these 20 children, and the population, like the entire population mean that has been stated in the article. So we will test the sample mean of, like we can compare the sample mean and the sample mean that we measure and the population mean that has been stated or that is claimed. So based on this, we can say that whether the claim is true or false. So this is what the hypothesis testing does. Basically, the hypothesis testing consists of 4 steps. The first step is to state the hypothesis, and next we set the criteria for the decision, and we compute the test statistic, and finally we make the decision. So basically, to begin, we identify the hypothesis or claim that we feel should be tested. So we state two mutually exclusive hypotheses. The first one is the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. And the null hypothesis is stated as a null, like it is the statement about the population parameter, as in our example. Like here, the claim about the mean number of hours that children in the Korea watch television, and the mean here is the parameter mean. The parameter is 3 hours. So this is the claim, or this is the null hypothesis, and this null hypothesis is assumed to be true. So for the children watching TV, we state that the null hypothesis is that children in the Korea watch an average of 3 hours of TV per week, and it is the starting point. And the null and we will test whether the value stated in the null hypothesis is likely to be true or not. Here, like we want to test the like here we want to test the claim of the mean number of hours that children in the Korea was television. Like here the parameter or mean is 3. So the null hypothesis H0, here the mean is equal to 3. This is the statement. And the alternative hypothesis, it is the statement that directly contradicts the null hypothesis. And we state like this hypothesis is inserted by stating that the actual value of population parameter is less than or greater than or equal or not equal to the value that is stated in the null hypothesis. Like for example, the children watching television example, we may have reason to believe that the children watch more than or less than 3 hours of TV per week. And when we are uncertain about the direction, we can state that the value in the null hypothesis is not equal to 3 hours. And in summary, the alternative hypothesis states that we think like what we think is wrong about the null hypothesis, and that is needed for the step 2. Here in step 2, here we do we select the criteria upon which we decide the claim being tested is true or not. Like for example, the claim is that the children watch 3 hours of the television per week. Most of the sample we select should have mean close to or equal to 3 hours if the claim were a claim that we are testing is true. So at what point do we decide the difference between the sample mean and our claim? Like the null hypothesis 3 is so big that the claim we are testing is likely not to be true, or alternative hypothesis is true. So by setting the criteria, we answer this question. And so basically in this step we specify, or we in this is the second step. And here what we do is we in this step we specify the alpha level, which is the significance or also significance level, and this is a kind of boundary level. And boundary where based on that we can